All right, my guest today, you've actually heard me talk about on this very podcast a couple weeks ago from the Irish Goodbye podcast. He has a new special out called Rage Against the Routine, which is free on YouTube right now. So go to Mike Feeney's YouTube page and check him out. It's my pal, Mike Feeney. What's going on, man?
Hey, how's it going? Thanks for having me.
I feel like I can say my pal because I noticed you follow me on Twitter. I don't know
I do.
why, but
I don't know. I just,
you just randomly started
any,
following me.
anybody that says nice things, I'm a pretty big
I
sucker for,
appreciate that. I
Yeah, yeah,
appreciate that.
of course. Yeah.
I feel like this will endear me to you, or you'll just leave the podcast entirely. But I feel like I should tell you this, get it off my chest.
Sure.
What I've done with your podcast is purposely say nice things because I've said, oh, I have more followers than the Irish Goodbye podcast. I feel like they may appreciate that and follow me back. And the most embarrassing thing I've done is followed you guys and unfollowed you because I'm like, that Irish Goodbye is going to follow me back eventually. If
Oh,
I
yeah.
keep doing that, eventually they'll notice me doing this, right?
Our producer Alex runs the social media account, so we'll fire her for that. But
Thank you. I appreciate
yeah,
it.
we'll
That's all
make
I
sure
ask.
we follow you back after the
Thank you.
program. Yeah.
How's the quarantine going?
It's all right, man. I mean, it's the good part was that my wife and I adopted a dog like the week right before this whole quarantine started. So, which
Oh,
has been
Jesus.
awesome because he's been, keeping us busy, giving us something to do, and he's great. But the downside is, my whole livelihood and everything I ever knew and built for the last 10 years is gone.
Yeah. Who
But
cares?
hey, who cares about that, right?
Yeah. Is
Yeah.
that a real? Actually, I was just talking about. We recorded a podcast right before this, and we were talking about that. I fear for guys like I've been lucky enough to keep my job right now, and I know you guys have a podcast that's keeping you going a little bit. But is that a legitimate fear? Are we getting to the point now where comedy is going to fucking take a real hit?
Well, I mean, it's definitely taking a hit. I can't see a world in which, because the reopening is going to be slow and staggered, and then comedy clubs are going to have to operate at half capacity. And there's just so many clubs that we're barely getting by anyway. I mean, New
Right.
York City's not going to have 10 comedy clubs after all this. I'll tell you that. I mean, there's probably going to be at least half go out of business. So
Jesus.
yeah, that's going to be. But I think the road outside of New York City will open up before New York does. I think it's going to be a while, which is just it's brutal. But I'm like, all that said, I'm grateful that I recorded back in September because then I was able to have content to put out for the last
Yeah. Thank
3
God.
months. My goal was like, I put it out in November, and I'm like between November and I had it out as an album initially, and then I was putting out a joke a week from it. And my goal was while I'm doing that, I'll be cultivating new material. So by the time the 21 weeks are over and I put out all this material, I'll have another half hour or 45 minutes to be able to start doing, to touring on that.
Right.
And nope, I've been locked in my house. So
Is that tougher to write now? Because I feel like now you've got nothing but time to write, but you're not doing anything. So
yeah,
how's that working?
it's like the writing you can always do, but it doesn't matter until you do it on stage because
Right.
you can think it's the greatest thing, and if people will just stare at you sideways, then it doesn't, So I've definitely been writing a lot and working on some other stuff, but yeah, I mean, for the last few weeks, I was just focusing on editing the rest of the special before putting it out. But now now I got it's just wide open in front of me, open ocean.
Have those? I saw a lot of shows. I think a couple weeks ago, I was talking about Mark Normand and Shane Gillis did
Yeah.
one where it was
Oh,
like
Shane said to say hi, by the way, because
oh, did he?
I did do a little back check because I did a couple podcasts in the past week that I didn't like personally know the person, and then I
Yeah.
jumped on, and it was a full-fledged nightmare. So then I
Like
was
this
like,
one, you'll be saying that to someone next week. Yeah.
well, I was like, I should start doing some due diligence. And then when I went on your page, I saw that Shane had done. So I was like, Shane, how was this? And he's like, he's great. Tell him I said hi. What a sweetie. So I was like, all right, I'm in. So that's
It's funny he said that because he was at Doug Stanhope's house.
mhm.
He was coming off of an Ambien, so he was all fucked up. So I'm surprised he remembers it, but I love Shane. He was awesome.
Yeah, he was great, and Stanhope is the man too. I told him that I don't know. I think he was. I don't even know how long he was with Stanhope, but I spent one night with Stanhope like 2 years ago, and I think I'm still hungover from it. So I don't know how he did it.
That's why I tried to get more. I think he was like a little legitimately a little groggy, because I was trying to ask him about Stanhope, and he was like, "Oh yeah, he's a good guy. He's having me over." I was like, "It's not weird that you're staying at his house like during a quarantine. Like that just seems so bizarre to me." But
Yeah. Wow.
But no, I brought him up because I think I saw he was doing one of those. I forget if it was the Stand in New York or someone putting on these shows where you're essentially doing stand up from your living room, basically. Are they
Yeah,
still trying that, or is anyone
some
doing that?
places are. I haven't jumped on that bandwagon yet. I told like there's comedy club like last night for New York Comedy Club. They did what they called like a New York Comedy Club experience. So they had like some of their favorite comics that work the club, and essentially they almost did like it was kind of like a Zoom podcast with a bunch of people in the room
Yeah.
as audience, and then it was segmented and there was questions they could lob to us to try to be funny. So it was more like an interactive panel than stand up. But yeah, a lot of people have asked me to do stand up and I just can't. I've turned down offers for people to be like, private gigs for people to ask me to do 45 minutes, but they don't want me to talk to people. They want me to just do 45 minutes of material. And I'm like, that's not what stand up. That's not what stand up is, man. Like, I don't know what you want me to tell you. It's just,
That'd be great if that's what I did. If I tricked you into, I'm like, all right, go ahead.
Yeah.
Floor is yours.
Yeah. Yeah. I just start doing act outs from the waist up. It's kind of a nightmare.
Have you had to do any? I mean, like obviously when you were actually out touring and everything, have you had to do a lot of those like morning zoo type shows yet? Where they're like, Mike, I see you've been pulled over. Tell us what that was about. Where they just set up your act and that type of shit.
Yeah, I'm thankful that I have so I've been headlining since like 2017, I guess. So it's been a good almost 3 years now, and thankfully I'm not like they usually do that for people that are in like bigger venues, essentially like Funny Bones, Improvs, people that see 350 and they got to do 5 shows, so they want to make sure they really pack it in. For me, I'm doing like 150 200 seat places that I'm doing like 3 shows, so they're not worried so much about me. But I don't know, what's funny is because of this quarantine, so many people it's got a captive audience, so many more of my stand-up clips have gotten passed around a lot more, that now there is actually a demand for people to see me. And unfortunately, for the first time, there's no supply. I can't supply any of it, but yeah, it's a nightmare.
Well, you're a big TikTok guy now, right?
Dude, TikTok. I mean, listen, here's the thing. Like everybody else, I don't know how long TikTok's been around for years, and I didn't join it until like January, maybe. And everybody like me, I always trashed it. I was like, oh, that's for 12-year-old Asian chicks to dance to and stuff. And then another comic was telling me, they were like, oh, I have like 40,000 followers on this. And I'm like, what? And they're like, yeah, just post my stand-up clips. And there's so few stand-up comedians on TikTok that I go, oh, all right. So I went on there, started posting my stand-up clips, and then they started explode. Like some of them have 5 million views. Like I woke up and had 40,000 followers overnight. Like it was in a matter of 3 months, I had more followers on TikTok than I did YouTube, Instagram, Twitter, and Facebook combined. It was crazy. So
do you think it's just going to be because I've had the podcast that I work on, the Kirk Minihane Show, I've told them for a couple times, I've mentioned the idea of, well, we should just put our clips on TikTok. And they're kind of like, no, it's like you said, it's for dancing girls and silly song lyrics and shit. But I was like, eventually it's just going to be Instagram or whatever. It's going to replace whatever. So we should just get on there now, right?
You should. And here's the thing, man. It's like, the people who are like, nah, that's for children. The people who are saying that now are the people that are going to join it in 3 years, and it's going to be too late. Like there's already, I think there's 600 billion people on the app, and there was like more downloaded than Instagram last year. It's like, it's crazy how many people are on it and how few, comedy, how little comedy there is on it.
Yeah, there's that many people are on it, and I don't know anyone with it. It's a weird,
right? Well,
I don't understand the numbers.
That's the funny thing too, is people go, like, oh, your fan base has got to be like 6 years old, or the 10-year-olds and stuff. And here's the thing: there's people that are up to like, I guess in their 50s and whatnot, because you can kind of see the analytics on it. But I look at it as like any new fans, like essentially 18 to 25-year-olds look at Instagram the way that we look at Facebook. They're like, oh, that's for old people. So it's like, that's what I want my fan base to be younger people, like 18 to 25. I don't want, like, I'm 32. I don't want 32-year-old fans, because they're like, I know as a 32-year-old, I'm like, don't introduce me to anything else. I've seen everything I want to see. I don't want any new stuff in my life. No new comics, no new anything, So that's how, you need the younger moldable audience.
Have you noticed, I mean, it's probably tough now because we're all shut down, but have you noticed a bump at all where your numbers are a little better, you're getting a little more traffic and everything?
Yeah, absolutely.
Really?
I mean, I've literally quadrupled my Instagram following, and my
Oh, wow.
TikTok my TikTok went from 11 followers in January to 200 and something thousand. So it's like I don't even know the math on that, but
Yeah.
yeah.
You're
But
at the forefront, my friend.
I'm an influencer. That's
Yes,
what
I
it
love
is.
it. You were also your other huge video was thanks to Barstool, right?
Yes, it was. The fine people at Barstool were so kind to, and that was crazy too because I've never seen. That was like my first experience with some sort of like viral nature, because what I did was I was in Mohegan Sun Casino. I was doing the weekend there, and as I was walking from my room, I just noticed in the vending machine there were 2 bags of popcorn that were kind of like teetering, like someone had bought them but they hadn't fallen. So I was like, oh shit. I just put it on my story. I'm like, my Instagram story. I was like, I'll just try and get this. Maybe I'll get 3 bags. And then, of course, the third one got stuck as well. So then I was like, fuck. I'm like, maybe I'll try it again later. And then I went and did shows that night, and I opened up my Instagram again. I had all these DMs from people being like, go back. And people started Venmoing me. They're like, I'll Venmo you $2 for you to try. Just do it again, do it again, do it again. So then I had all these Venmos. So I went back up to it drunk, like 5 hours later. All those bags were still there. And then I had to buy essentially I had to buy the whole row. It was like another 4 or 5 bags. And then it kept getting stuck. And then there was just, again, a series of stories on my Instagram. I go to bed that night and I was like, I got all this popcorn. That was really fun. And then I woke up to like 100 DMs of people being like, that was the greatest thing I've ever seen. And then a couple comics were like, dude, you should stitch those together and put it out. That'll go viral. And, comic people say that a lot. And I was like, I don't think so. I was like, but it would be a fun video to put. So I edited it together, put some dramatic music to it. And then, next thing you know, I was, talking about Barstool. Barstool put it on, and then away we went. And it was
That's
crazy.
actually what I found interesting because I listen to your podcast all the time, and I heard like the story of it. What I found more fascinating was I just assumed Barstool saw it and like reposted it or something. But I'm listening to your podcast and I hear, so I'm negotiating with Barstool Sports behind the scenes. I didn't realize all that went into I work there.
Well, yeah.
And I didn't know that went into all the videos they post.
Well, because Barstool, they're such a big thing. They're trying to protect themselves from getting sued and stuff. So like my video, the one on my page had like dramatic music, and then it had this opera thing when I won and all that stuff. But they can't use that because that's all copyrighted music. So they asked me to like remove all the music. So the one on the Barstool page has no music to it. It's just the series, like how the story is played out. But I think so that one, blew up on Barstool's thing. And then I guess people came to my page, and then when they saw mine had music, which enhances it, then mine blew up. So like mine got over 2 million, and on Barstool it had 3 million or whatever the hell. And it's the dumbest thing on the planet that ever went viral, I'm pretty sure. But it's
no, it definitely isn't. It's plenty dumber.
That's true. I guess it isn't, but for what I would have expected. But yeah, ever since then it's been great.
I do have to say, you sound pristine quality. Like when I've listened to your podcast, and there have been weeks where I'm like, oh, this must be an old one they put up or something, because you guys sound really good. But has it been weird at all getting used to it? Because I've noticed a lot. Like with Shane, his connection wasn't great, so it was a lot of he'd be talking, I'd start to talk over. There was a lot of that going on where there's a disconnect when you're having a conversation.
The first 2 weeks of the Zoom, the first 2 episodes of Irish Goodbye through the Zoom, through Zoom conferencing wasn't great because we were just using like the whatever, like the shitty audio. But then we found out. So first off, I have my microphone plugged into a Zoom recorder, and then the Zoom recorder is plugged into that. So that's, I think, why it sounds good. But then also for Irish Goodbye, just, if we want to get into the technical stuff, we record locally. So that way it's because Zoom's audio quality is not great. So we use the video for Zoom, but then we record locally, and then our producer does all of the nightmarish hell of putting it together and stitching it and trying to make it all line up, because it's like 2 frames off, and then it's a nightmare for her, but not for us. So,
who gives a fuck? That's Justin's problem when I'm done with this.
Yeah, exactly.
That's why, not to get off on a fucking technical tangent, but why is Zoom the thing that everyone like? Skype must be shitting themselves. Like, why was that not the thing that everyone went to?
I don't know how Zoom became the thing so fast. I think and then like Google's trying to do a thing now with it as well, but I have no clue. I just know that the first few podcasts that I was invited to do were all via Zoom, I guess, because you can invite like a lot of people in maybe, and then and also record the video and whatnot. And then next thing you know, we have a subscription to it as well that we're using. So, but I've never heard of StreamYard before, and this seems
Well,
like just
I'm glad you asked, Mike, because I've got about 40 minutes on. This is what I do: is I just invite comedians on to talk tech with them.
Yeah,
Bore everyone to death. So this was I think the reason we were talking about Irish Goodbye a couple weeks ago is because I liked the episode you guys did, the petty episode, I think you called it.
Oh yeah,
Where you found just some asshole that was trolling you on Twitter. You found he was a comedian and you started shitting on him. I was almost like, I feel bad that they're doing that to this guy, but then I was like, I'm glad they're doing it. Like, I just loved the idea of it.
Yeah, man, and that was actually on TikTok, and it was crazy. It was on a video. It was on one of my stand-up clips that went viral. Like, it had I think 4 or 5 million views on it, and and that's a good thing about TikTok too. Is like it's like TikTok is for people who haven't been on Reddit yet, I guess, because for the majority of the comments are like, "This is funny," and I'm like, "Oh my god, no one's calling me gay. This is lovely," And so I started looking at the comment, and then of course one of the guys, which some people whatever make fun of me or whatnot, I don't give a shit. But then when his handle, the last part of it was like his name and then comedy. And then I was like, get the fuck out of it. So that, it's you're like, I understand if you're just a normal person, you want to shit on somebody, you're faceless, voiceless, who gives a shit. But if you're trying to be a comedian and you're going to shit on another comedian who, by the way, you're shitting on a successful video of a comedian, like it blew my mind. And then, I had way too much time on my hands. And because of this quarantine, found one of his stand-up clips, and then we played it. And here's the thing. We initially weren't going to bleep out his name because I was like, Mike, my co-host convinced me. He was like, fuck him, who gives a shit, this guy sucks. And I was like, yeah, he does.
That's
suck.
what I would have said too, honestly.
I
think me and Mike are wrong on that.
Yeah and then afterwards I was like, a couple hours went by, I'm like, it's so punching down, and I feel it's funny enough that we're trashing him. And also, like, here's the other thing, I don't want to give him 1 ounce of shine, where even if a couple people that like hate me are like, yeah, I'll follow you, because it's like I don't want my goal in life is that at some point, somewhere along the line, he stumbles upon the podcast and hears it and is absolutely mortified. That's my goal.
Well, it's amazing. Like, that's how the way you guys reacted is how I want to react to every negative comment. And there's just so many that come to me now that I've had to say, like, oh, I can't do that. But it is like, I've heard people say, like, I think I heard one of these guys say something to the effect of like, well, I know that comment ruined your weekend and that makes me happy. And I was like, what? Then I want to argue with them and say, well, that's a pathetic fucking life that you have. And then I'm like, no, wait, he wants this too. Like, that's
exactly. They just want a reaction, man. And that's what's so crazy too. It's like, so on my YouTube special, the Rage Against the Routine one, it took 5 days, but I finally have my first 2 or 3 like down votes, like thumbs down on it, which is so hilarious. It's like, I'm putting out almost an hour of content of stand-up comedy for free for you, which is shot beautifully. Like, you don't have to have this, you know what I mean? Like, I didn't make you pay for this, and you're like, this wasn't worth my money. It's like, why would you downvote something? It's because people can't create things themselves and they feel bitter and miserable about it, so they have to shit on somebody else's hard work. And you're like, man, I guess, like, it's funny.
The YouTube network you're on right now is the Kirk Minihane Show network. And Kirk basically what we're doing with the YouTube is just kind of having, it's like a playground for the fans and shit. Like, I mean, I'm on the show, but I host a couple shows, and then a bunch of fans host shows and shit like that. So it's kind of interesting what we're doing. But the interns, so Justin, the kid running the board right now, and the interns do a show. And I remember I was waiting in the room before they started once because I wanted to check out the episode. So the episode hadn't started yet. It had 3 likes and 5 dislikes.
That's what
I was like, no one has seen this yet. How is that possible?
And that happens so much, like, like I'm good friends with like the Legion of Skanks guys, like Luis Gomez and Dave Smith and Big J. But yes, I know. I said it purposely to make him angry. But Luis, Luis was hated, and probably is still hated by at least a third of their fan base. They hate him, but it's like, but they still listen every fucking week. The Legion of Skanks subreddit, you know what I mean? An Opium Anthony subreddit, all those subreddits are just people that just spew all this hate, but they still listen every week just to complain about it. And you're like, dude, some of their episodes are 3 hours. You're putting 3 hours a week into something you hate? That's crazy to me.
Well, when I was still in college is when Anthony got fired from Opium Anthony.
Yeah.
And I did a podcast about it at the time, and I just started podcasting, so I wanted to promote it to people. And I said, "Oh, the Opium Anthony subreddit might be a good place to post meet." And I go, "Hey guys, I defended Anthony of Opium Anthony. Check it out if you'd like." And they're like, "Get out of here, you fucking asshole! You self-righteous promoter. Go fuck yourself, you piece of shit."
I'm
I
sure
was like,
that's the nicest
guys,
thing they
fellas, I
said
just
to you.
wanted to.
Yeah, dude, it's brutal. It's such a funny thing, especially like I don't know what it is about Reddit, but it just attracts so much negativity and hate.
Is that a
crazy.
fear of so your Irish Goodbye podcast is on Gas Digital Network, by the way, if you want to go check out Mike. Is that being associated with a guy like Louis J. Gomez or Legion of Skanks and all that stuff? Does that worry you for like your career at all? Because I was talking to Shane when he was on about the idea of not only is your life going through this controversy right now, but one of the guys defending you is Louis J. Gomez, maybe possibly the worst person you could have on the front lines for you.
Why? What happened to Shane? Anything?
No, it wasn't a big deal, but he was on a sketch show, and he lost that job for some reason. Yeah.
No, man. Here's the thing, man. It's like, I've done Skankfest every year that it's been there. Lewis, I used to open for him on the road. Lewis was the first comedian to really like. I mean, the weird, like in terms of person who was a headliner to like quote unquote believe in me and like take me on the road, introduce me to things. And he's fucking awesome. He put me on Legion of Skanks like so many times and exposed me to so many fans. And I got to tell you, those Legion of Skanks fans, man, are incredible. Like they come out now when I'm on the road, like one of the more recent shows I did right before the quarantine, I was in St. Paul, Minnesota. And then I was also in Atlantic City. Both places people had Legion of Skanks shirts on and stuff like that. So it's like those fans are fucking hardcore comedy fans. They're also fucking like juggalos, but but
that's the joke.
Great.
I've been to Skankfest 3 years in a row.
Yes.
And the joke that is made every room you're in, someone is making the joke. It's the gathering of the juggalos meets fucking some rock concert or something.
Yeah.
Like that.
Well, no, it really is. And listen, like Skankfest has been, especially last year, Skankfest was like,
crazy.
Essentially for 72 hours, you just feel like a god as a comedian, and performer. You know what I mean? It's like, it's crazy. And it's so amazing to have a festival where you're walking the halls with the fans. You know what I mean? There's so much in comedy of like the separation of like comedians hang out back here and then the audience is here. It's like, in order for me to get to the stage, I got to walk through the crowd, and just it's just so awesome. It's like we always have the Irish Goodbye beer pong tournament there every single year and stuff. And just like I remember, it just goes to testament to both how the podcast has grown and how Skankfest has grown. I think 2 years ago, we were doing a 2-day fest, and it was kind of like a struggle to get 20 teams to sign up. And then last year, we had 20 teams sign up in the first hour of Skankfest.
I couldn't get in the room you guys were in. I went just to go watch it, and I couldn't get inside.
It was crazy. It was pandemonium. Yeah. So I mean, I got nothing but love for Legion of Skankfest and Lewis and all that stuff. Like, obviously, like. They say inflammatory shit, but that's how they build themselves. And Lewis is loyal, fucking like, I know if I'm ever in some shit, I don't have to worry about being like backstabbed by any of those guys.
Yeah, no. As much as like I was shitting on people on Reddit and everything, it's funny being at Skankfest because there's such an opinion of what those people are. Like you look at when Milo Yiannopoulos was on, and you read the reviews of that and everything, or even the reviews written about like Louis being there and shit like that, and you hear the people talk about. It's like that's not what it is. It's like the nicest group of people you could ever imagine being around, honestly. They're shy. They're like afraid to say anything mean to you.
Even the ones that are the ones on like Reddit, they still come up to you and they're like staring at their shoes, being like, "Hey, I'm a big fan of yours." And you're like, "Aren't you the guy that said I suck ass?" Like it's just the people, it's just everyone's an internet tough guy. But no, man, it's like, that's the other thing too. It's like, it's this, ever since Tough Crowd, like a lot of fans, and they see us busting balls and shitting on each other. So a lot of fans want to be like, I want to be part of it too. And it's like, dude, it's like, like growing up, like in Long Island, all we did was shit on each other. That was the language. If I shit on you, it means I love you. But if a person we didn't know shit on my buddy, well, we're going to fucking fight about it. You don't get to do that. You know what I mean? It's like, we're pals. We can shit on each other. You can't fucking come in and do that.
Yeah, I've had people come. I'm actually legally blind. I don't know if that's not just a wacky DJ name that I have.
Yeah, I found that out in my. I also like that you have like famous blind people over your shoulder. That's
fun. Yes, that's an homage.
Yeah.
But yeah, no, Shane actually made me take my glasses off to prove to him that I was blind. So
Well, I saw your video where you get interviewed for your internship.
oh yes, one of the
Uh,
great highlights.
Yeah, and that was because you don't have like I picture every person that takes off their glasses that are blind, it's
Mhm.
gonna be like a full nightmare under there. But you just seem like like you don't seem blind at
Oh,
all.
really?
Like
Well, that's not what the reviews I've heard for the last 5 years have not been that, but I appreciate it. Thank
yeah,
you.
you don't have like the Oracle look, you know what I mean? Where you're like
Yeah, yeah.
cloudy eyed and fucking going all over the place, you know?
Right, but so I have gotten that where people will come up to me and go like, "Hey, how many fingers?" or some bullshit like
Ugh,
that, and I'm like, "What? Why would you say
yeah,
that?"
what a
And then
weird
immediately they're
thing.
like, "Oh shit, I'm sorry, man." But it's like at first they just want to be. They think they're your buddy already.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah. Jesus.
Actually, speaking of Skankfest, were you there when Louis showed up?
Was I there, pal? I was fucking. I knew he was coming. I was in the green room when he walked in, and then, we were all just kind of commingling and stuff. And then they asked him a few times, like, "You want to go up? You want to go up?" And he was like, "No, no, I'm
Yeah.
good." And then he was watching. He was watching a lot of shows. Like he was. And that's the other thing too. That's like the media. Fake news media was reporting was that they were all like Louis, snuck in the back door and went on stage
Yes.
before any of the staff.
The
And they
staff was terrified.
Louis
Yeah.
was there for 3 hours before he went on stage, and he was watching comedy. He was just watching the stand-up shows, and he was having so much fun seeing people crushing, and that he eventually was like, all right, maybe I'll do a set. And I was, when he went on stage, I was right behind, I was backstage, just watching. I watched it from backstage.
Yeah.
And I mean, that ovation that he got was bananas. And then,
Well,
and also
think the
he murdered on top of that.
I think the biggest fight I've had with my girlfriend, which is pretty sad that this is one of our bigger arguments, but we were there that weekend. My girlfriend got a little day drunk, so we went back to the hotel so she could take a nap, and then like we just skipped that show or whatever. So I didn't know anything had happened, and then the next day everyone's talking about Louis C.K. being there. And I was like, what the fuck? You had to get shit faced, didn't you? Like all of a sudden I'm yelling at her when last night I was fine with it.
Yeah. No, man, it's just one of those things. And they tried to get, I mean, not even tried, but they offered Burr the opportunity to do
Yeah.
stand up. And that to me was like so fucking rock and roll of Burr to like come in,
Just play the drums or whatever he did.
yeah, just from filming the Pete Davidson movie, and like just he was again hanging out for a few hours watching comedy from behind backstage and stuff. Nobody knew he was there. And then at the last day of the last show doing the goddamn comedy jam, he's like, I'll just come out and play some Kickstart My Heart on drums, and just being like, by the way, Bill Burr. Like he just like people went in like that level.
That
of,
I was
like,
there for. That was
yeah.
awesome.
I mean, yeah, and that goddamn comedy jam is the most fun. I mean, I was drunk, stoned, and on a little bit of acid. And I got to tell you, when we were all on stage at the end singing like "Sweet Child of Mine" and "Four Non Blondes," it's like there's no better
Fucking
feeling.
awesome.
Yeah, it's the best.
Does that worry? So, have you ever? I assume you. Well, actually, I know you have because I watched the 100th episode of Irish Goodbye. So you've performed like shit faced. I assume.
The Power Hour. That was a Power Hour episode, man.
Tremendous episode.
That's an all-time. I don't understand. Now that's a video that should be viral because every college across America should have people trying to play along a Power Hour while because I mean it was insane. But no, man. I mean, I don't like to do stand up that way. I don't even like to have like one drink before doing stand up. I feel a little like off, and I never perform stoned unless sometimes if I'm hosting, I'll smoke a little because then I'm just talking and bullshitting. But all you need when you're on stage, you're so vulnerable as it is, where if I smoke a little weed and then I'll say a joke and then just one person's like, what? I'm like, I don't know. Like I just immediately will fold in on myself. So my thing is like, it's my treat to get shit-faced after, like immediately after the show. I'm like, give me a dirty martini and a blunt. Let's get fucking crazy. But at Skankfest, you get there at noon. I'm fucking doing the beer pong tournament. I'm chugging. Everybody has weed, so I'm still smoking. So yeah, Skankfest, I guess, is the exception that I was performing high. But thankfully, so many people were fucking heroin nodding out and on kratom and shit that it didn't really.
For 3 straight days of drinking and drugs.
It didn't really matter. Yeah.
Well, I kind of learned that the hard way because I had. I'm naturally a very like nervous, awkward guy.
Mm-hmm.
And then we did a live show once where I was like, well, I'll have a couple beers. That'll loosen me up. I'll be fine. And then people kept handing me them. And then I was like, well, I can certainly have one more. And then I don't really remember how many I had. And then I'm just like, let me fucking tell you something.
That's
And
how it
in my
works.
mind, I was totally fine. And then the next day, everyone was like, why would you ruin our evening like that?
Yeah. Well, that's the problem too, man, is you start like, for me, it's like my brain starts moving faster than my mouth. So then
Right.
I'm like, oh, I got to say this, this, and this. And then I start stumbling over words. And it's like, yeah, it's a nightmare.
Yeah. And that, I mean, I imagine that's tough when you do a show like you do, because I would think your fans are just buying a drink, like, hey, here you go.
Yeah, well, and that's the thing I've kind of made clear to them too, which is for any comedian anywhere. If you ever go see a stand-up comedian, especially one that you have any hopes of like engaging with or talking to,
Yeah.
do it after the show, never before the show. No comedian ever wants like, even if you're like, hey, dude, I'm the biggest fan. I love everything you do. I'm so excited to be here. It's like, well, fuck. Now that's extra pressure on me. And if you hate the show, and then if I don't see you after the show, then I'm gonna be like, fuck, did I bomb? Like, what the fuck happened? But after the show, it's like, I was just in when I was in St. Paul. That was my last road gig. I was in St. Paul in March, and there was so many fucking fans that came out that were IGP fans or knew me from Legion of Skanks or whatever, and they came out and they're like, "I'll get you a fucking dirty martini because I know you like dirty martinis." Another person's like, "I got weed for you. Here's weed." Like, it's so cool. Like, I guess the benefit of fucking being an open book in terms of exposing everything good and bad you do in your
Yeah.
life is that people know you intimately and can reward you as such.
Yeah, right. Is there pressure to that at all? Because I listen to your guys' podcast, and I mean, we'll get to how it is now in a second, but just on a weekly basis, when you guys are talking about touring, I'm like, my life is such a bore that if I was doing a storytelling podcast, I'd be like, the Uber driver today was a little rude to me.
Yeah, well, I mean,
I would run out of shit, and you guys have to go back to like a month.
well,
in
it's funny
time, which
because
impresses me.
we started keeping very detailed notes once we started doing the podcast, and Mike was headlining before I was. So it's funny because Mike would tell a story about being like, I went to like Uncle Vinny's in Point Pleasant, New Jersey, and I had this experience, and then like a year later, or maybe a little bit less, I'm
You would,
telling my version of being like, I was at Uncle Vinny's and we did, because so we're playing kind of like the same clubs, just different. So we're like, oh, you went to New Hope, Pennsylvania? Here's my story from New Hope. But everybody's experience is different, and now Mike doesn't drink, so he's out of that world. And meanwhile, I'm like still all for debauchery. Let's go out and get shit faced afterwards. Let's party.
How has it been now, though? Have you guys kind of hit a wall with stories, or how are you doing with it?
Now it's funny. We've been most immediately recently. We've been focusing on our producer Alex, who has
I have
who
heard
just
that.
got out of a 10-year relationship. So we're doing kind of a bachelorette for her, which we're having people send in video submissions, which are hilarious. We did have some stories that actually have happened to us, which they're few and far between now. But ever since then, I memean, we're good at just like Mike and I have such photographic and storytelling memories that even just talking about whatever, like if we were in this and he was in here, we'd be like, here's a story about a blind kid I knew when I was a kid, and it would all like, it just, we have a lot of stories we're telling. So but it's not, I don't think it's too much pressure. It's just because our format's very stream of consciousness, butterfly effect type of shit anyway.
Yeah, I just know that I would be thinking like, oh, well, it's Saturday now, and I haven't had enough happen to me yet, so now I have to create a story to happen to me. Like,
Yeah,
it would just get in my head all the time.
Yeah, it's fair. But again, we also like, if we're really thin on stuff, we like to do like a fun it's like a warm-up exercise where we have Alex, our producer, say some like which would you rathers, and that kind of a thing kind of like gets us go. It's like, gets the juices going. Because we used to smoke before every single podcast. So like a lot of times we were just like cross-eyed looking into space, like we can't possibly speak into a microphone right now. And then she'd be like, how about this? Which would you rather? Be totally free or totally safe? And we're like, whoa. And then, and then that's next thing you know, it's been an hour.
I do like the moments in your podcast where usually Mike Cannon will be telling a story and say, what the fuck was I just talking about? Like seconds ago. I don't know what I was talking about 5 seconds ago.
Yeah, he gets lost. He gets lost very quickly, and also he focuses on my face. And when we were in the studio, I could see everything behind him, so I could see the producer, and behind the glass, I could see all the moving parts. He's only can see is me. So when he sees my eyes going, he can't keep going with the story, knowing that I'm trying to handle things. So he has to stop and be like, "What are you looking at? What are you doing? What's going on? What's wrong?" And I'm like, shut up, I'm paying attention, just fucking keep going.
Is there like legitimate tension between you guys? Because sometimes I'm like, is Mike gonna quit the podcast? Like, I don't understand what's happening.
He almost quit the podcast over TikTok, actually.
I heard that one,
yeah, that was the great TikTok fight. That was he almost walked out over that. That was the biggest fight we got into, which was completely real. Although I will say, I thought we were doing a bit for the podcast, so I was kind of like needling him, thinking that like he was mad. I knew he was like mad, but I didn't think he was like that, like walk out of the studio mad. And then he did, but then he had a bunch of extra shit going on and having a new baby, and he was gonna be, so there was all that. But no, man, we're fucking like brothers at this point. We've known each other for fucking 8 years. We've written a pilot together and stuff. We've done and we've done 180 hours of podcasting, I think, together. So that's kind of all the people. Like, our relationship is like everyone I grew up with, where it's like it seems like we're enemies, but we're actually brothers. It's so weird.
I thought the way you guys cut that was really funny, because you hear him freak out and he's getting legitimately angry, and then he walks out, and then the way it's cut is there's no reintroduction or anything. It's just him saying, all right, I may have overreacted.
yeah. Well, because I had to like chase him out of the studio. I'm like, are you really leaving? And then we had to go in, hash it out, talk. And then I forgot what he was doing that day, but he was doing something very important, which I think it was either like, I think he was taping something for Comedy Central that night. It was something where like there was a bunch of additional stress that like this needed to get out, and it manifested in my direction. But I also, caused I was gasoline on the fire, I guess.
I'm always interested to hear people's response to this, just because I can't really picture who it would be. But did you have someone, I know a lot of guys when they start in comedy are basically imitating someone else, like someone else's voice. Did you have that when you first started out?
With me, man, like growing up, like I'd be all right in school, but then I would watch like a Seinfeld special, and I would like remember the entire thing after watching it once and recite that to my family. So like I'd say Seinfeld, Carlin was massive for me. So it's like, and I guess Cosby, and also
I prefer his more recent work. Cosby.
Yeah. Like Bill Cosby's himself, though, I still think is one of like the greatest comedy specials. And then who was the other one? Like even like, dude, like Robin Williams live on Broadway, just the way he was like performing and like running all over it. It's like that shit to me. So I kind of like the idea. So I was definitely in the beginning, like I look at some of my old material and it is straight up Seinfeld, just being
really?
like, like why is it like I used to have like my first year in comedy, I had a bit about English muffins where I'm like why are they selling them, like why aren't they pre-split? Now they says they're easier to open, just open them, like I didn't raise my voice like that, but it was, and then I eventually found my
it'd be great if you just started everything with what's the deal, and that what's the deal with English muffins?
Yeah. So eventually, you realize that once you start hearing it back, hopefully you learn, or enough people tell you like, you might want to kind of, distance yourself from that. And then I found my own angry voice.
Do people compare you to Mulaney at all, just because you look a lot like him?
All the time,
yeah,
dude.
I figured. I didn't even want to bring it up, but
dude, I mean, if you look at the comments of my like TikToks, so many of them are like, I thought this was John Mulaney vibes, and it's like, I get it. We both have like very like 1940s horse racer announcer voices, and we're both tall white guys with hair. But I mean, and listen, here's the thing: I think Mulaney is one of the best comedians working, and he's fucking so funny and famous and rich that I would love his career. So I don't take it personally. Like if somebody, was comparing to me to like a shitty comic or a hack, I'm like, yeah, here's the thing. I would love to be as gifted as a writer as he is, but I'm not. But I think, once you get past our voice, you realize that our material is very different.
Yeah, don't go back and watch any of these episodes, because I think in the one where I talked about you guys, I kind of compared you to John Mulaney. So
that's fine. Listen, like I said,
I said John Mulaney if he kept drinking or something like that.
Yeah, that's not bad. Like I said, I don't take it personally. I take it as a compliment. It's just one of those things where like it gets said. It's like it's now replacing the. Did anybody ever say like Mr. Feeney from Boy Meets World? Which where you're like, no, you're actually the first. Can you believe it?
Right.
Yeah.
With me on Twitter, that's if I ever say I saw a movie or I saw this or something, the first 5 responses. Did you see it, Mike? Did you see it?
Did you really?
I'm like, oh, that's very funny. That's clever.
Yeah. That'd be funny if you just had like a Mr. Magoo like windshield underneath your television, so that way you can like, it's, like correct.
Actually, I did. Yes.
Yeah. Yeah.
Oh, the reason we never ended up getting to it, but the reason I brought up Lewis and Gas Digital and all that is more not that you'd be actually worried about being associated with them, but like with Shane Gillis, people poured through all his podcasts and found
Mhm.
certain things that he said. Do you worry that someday you're going to get, or do you not even go for that stuff? Would you not go for SNL because of some of the material you do or anything like that?
Well, it's so funny. First off, they said that on the Shane thing because once the Shane shit got serious, I know like Legion of Skanks and a bunch of other
Mhm.
any Shane Gillis appearance was taken down to protect him, you
Right.
know, because they were like, this gets a lot of listens and we got to protect him and stuff like that.
Yeah.
Nobody took down our episode. It was when we had Shane on Irish Goodbye, and it was a fucking killer episode. But no, obviously, like we're not as inflammatory as him. But I will say, like on our podcast, like I've never said the N word. I've probably said like the F word, you know, for gay
Yeah.
people, but I've said that more of like quoting people making fun of me or something. But I've never like here. So what we decided to do is, which arguably is worse, is we made those drops. Alex has made our drops where if we start
Right.
if we start leaning into something that might be considered a little racially insensitive, we have different drops for different ethnicities and groups
Sure.
of people, which
Not
for
offensive at
sure-
all. No,
no,
it's
which for
perfectly fine.
sure is going to come back to bite us way more. But we have so many African American fans that listen. They're like, the fucking Popeyes drop makes me laugh every single
Yeah.
time, like all that shit. So I don't know, man. Like for me, like and if I'm ever on a podcast, like I've done a bunch of, you know, crazy podcasts where people are saying some wild shit, either like fucking, you know, like you know, whatever. I've done some compound media shows before, and but like, you know,
Dangerous ground.
yeah, well, that's one of the things. It was like if you're stuck in that weird spot where you're on camera and recording while someone's saying some like either racially skewed shit or something where you're
Yeah.
like, oh God, you're stuck in that middle ground of like, I don't want to be a bad guest and not think, but I'll just kind of do a thing where I'm
Right.
like,
But
you
I
know,
don't.
like
But you also don't want to be the guy on the like. It's almost more offensive that Mike Feeney was laughing in the
yeah,
background.
yeah. So I don't know if it's something that's like Jesus Christ, man. Like I always kind of just sit it out, or if it's like, or if it's something just vile, I'm like, guys, let's fucking, you know, you can change the subject a little bit, but I don't think I've said. I think that, like, you know, I'm sure you can find some, especially in like 10 years from now, who knows what's going to be considered offensive, you
Sure.
know, or like
Yeah.
the shit that we said. But I think for the most part, like I said, it's such a weird time that we're in, and maybe because, you know, of the Legion of Skanks Association, Gas Digital, and doing all that stuff, that's gonna, you know, not have me get a network television show or whatever the fuck it is.
Yeah.
But also at the same time, it's like you don't need that anymore. You don't.
No, yeah,
You
it's not
like.
the way it used
I'd
to be.
rather have a fan base that comes to see me than be like, oh, you're the guy from SNL. Do your character. You know, like I don't.
Right.
I'd rather.
Like Shane honestly might be better off having gotten fired from it, being the guy that got fired because people kind of rally around him almost.
Yeah, I mean, he definitely get that. Although Shane would argue it's much better to be on SNL than to not be
He
on
did
SNL.
make that point, yeah.
Yeah. They do make a lot of money, and he would have been
Yeah.
hanging out with Eddie Murphy and other people. But no, Shane's gonna be fine, and I think that it's like, yeah, I think you just gotta kind of watch what you say.
How's the special doing? And more what I mean by that is you kind of, correct me if I'm wrong, kind of followed like the Andrew Schultz type model.
Yeah.
Where you put up clips first. And by the way, does Andrew Schultz get too much credit for that? Because essentially what he said is, yeah, I put my shit on YouTube, and everyone was like, what a genius this man is.
Yeah. I mean, it's funny you bring him up because I mean I've known Andrew since we like, you know, were doing, you know, the Village Lantern in the you know, in Greenwich Village, just doing the bottom of a bar barking people in to do shows before. He had started a few years before me, but I've known each other since. I've known him since I started, and he's been obviously blowing up. I mean, he's selling out theaters now.
Yeah.
He's a theater comic now.
Yes.
And it really worked. I mean, he took a huge gamble. He put it, nobody wanted to buy his shit. So he just was like, I'll just put it out. Nobody was fucking with him. And also, I think to his credit, he got like so much funnier. Like he used to initially when I first met him, he was just kind of like, women eat pussy like this, but men eat pussy like that. Like, you know, he was
Yeah.
a little more of like urban swaying, just kind of a thing. And now it's like he actually makes like salient, really funny
Oh, no,
points.
he's
and
actually really funny and insightful
it's
now.
fucking
Yeah.
hilarious, man. And
Yeah.
he also is 100%. someone that he's like my consigliere. Like I consult him on a lot of things. So like when I was doing the album and stuff, I was like, I want to record the album so I have content to put out. And he's like, absolutely. And then when we talked about, putting out clips, he was the one that was like, helped me format it to be like, for IGTV, it's got to be this way. You got to have to do captions, like just little things where I could always kind of trust him. I trust his advice, and he was pretty big at that. And because of that, is the reason that I put out a joke per week instead of, because some people do like I'll put out the special first and then I'll put out all each thing. I was like, the way
that's
I
what I would have done just logically. That's how I would have thought it would work. But.
Well, I guess I don't know if it's from seeing Andrew's success or talking to him or a combination of both, that I was just kind of like, well, if I put out a joke each week, the thing you want to do, like what I'm trying to do is like points of access with fans, right? So like I have jokes about weed, about drinking, about gun control, about road rage, about being married. So like, but if my gun control bit, right, maybe that's like 15 minutes into my special. If you fucking love this gun control bit, you're going to want to see more stuff from me. But if you have to watch me do marriage material up top and road rage stuff before that, you're like, I might not be interested in that. You're going to click off. But if I give you just the gun control shit, then you're going to go, oh, fuck, I like this. Let me see what else he does.
Yeah.
And then before
you say, I already know this guy's funny.
You're already watching the whole thing. So it's also way more palatable. Like, listen, like let's say somebody you don't know is like, oh, here's something funny. And they send you a 55-minute version or a 2-minute clip. It's like, you're obviously going to watch the 2-minute clip and be like, that's what, and then if I like it, then I'll invest more time. So that's what I decided to do. And thank God I did, because like I said, from January until now, my social media, because of the jokes, it took a little while, but they all started gaining a lot of traction, which has been amazing. And now because of that, the special is doing pretty well. Like that's the other part of it too. It's like I put it out as an audio album in November. It did great. It went up to #1 on iTunes. It was #6 across the country in Billboard, which was fucking blew my tits off. And then when I started putting out all the clips, now it's like the special is just icing on the cake for me. Like I have no expectations. I have no, like, I need this to get 1 million views. Like I don't give a shit. It's up there forever for free. Anyone could do it. Or you could just watch the clips of it. But I'd like the more people that watch it, even better.
Yeah, so go check it out. Unless Justin fucked up somewhere, the link should be in the bio here. So go click on Rage Against the Routine, which is on Mike Feeney's YouTube channel. Is there an easier way to find that? Like, are you at Mike Feeney or?
Mike Feeney Comedy on YouTube. But if you just type in Mike Feeney on YouTube,
just search Mike Feeney
right
Rage Against the Routine. It'll come up. I am Mike Feeney on Twitter and Instagram.
Instagram and TikTok. I'm across the board.
That's right. Of course, my mistake. I'm sorry.
You got to do it. You got to be streamlined.
And check out Irish Goodbye Podcast on the Gas Digital Network. Use code IGP30 and you can get a free trial for the whole network, actually. So go check those guys out.
30 days.
And then you were also telling me you have a Patreon as well.
So yeah, that was the other thing we started while we were in this quarantine, to kind of try to make some extra cash and stuff like that, because a lot of fans do want to support that aren't able to come to shows right now. So my co-host from Irish Goodbye, Mike Cannon, and then also a frequent, essentially almost like a third mic on Irish Goodbye, which is Brendan Sagalow. We call him Brendan the Sneaky Raccoon Sagalow. We started a podcast, a Patreon only podcast called What's the Scenario, which is basically just answering hypotheticals. It's basically, we could describe it as a comedy obstacle course, where we just get thrown scenarios from Patreon members and stuff, and they go, all right, if you had like little things to be like, if you had 2 household items to defend yourself in a zombie apocalypse, what would it be? Just things like that, which always devolves into us fighting and shit like that. But yeah, we do that. It's totally evergreen, so you can listen to it 10 years from now. We're not talking about current events. It's escapism comedy. So that's at patreon.com/scenario pod.
Awesome. And check that out, because as you're explaining, I'm saying that's what I would want to hear you guys talk about. So that's actually perfect. So go check that out as well.
It's just sometimes the COVID shit is so like sad and traumatizing and just kind of like, it's just so heavy that instead of us sitting here every day being like, yeah, I don't know, man, I don't know when it's coming back, I don't know if it's coming back, at least it's just like, okay. So like one of Brendan's questions, which is the greatest, like one of the best things that we've heard, is like, if you could release a furious elephant at any point in history, where would you release it? And like, and just that kind of idea and picturing that and just like where we would do it is such a fun, it's just a fun thing.
I love it. So yeah, go check out this was we went longer than I expected to do, and I didn't get to everything I wanted to do with you. So this was awesome. I appreciate you coming on, man.
I'll come back sometime.
All right, man. Talk to you next week, everybody. Goodbye.